call this agenda setting meeting to order, please. Roll call. Oh, we don't need a roll call. Okay. Everybody just take a few minutes this evening to just think about the people in that accident this evening, and maybe say an extra little prayer. Would appreciate it. We will table 2 through 5. We have nothing for agenda items, and we'll move to athletics. Mr. Renzi.
Thank you, Mr. Manzella. Request approval of the 2022-2023 supplemental athletic contracts for junior varsity assistant baseball coach, junior high head baseball coach, junior high assistant baseball coach, varsity first assistant track coach. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the 2023-2024 winter supplemental athletic contracts pending solicitor review as attached. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And request approval of the following volunteer coaches for varsity track, varsity baseball, and middle school softball. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Anything, Mr. Martucci?
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Sangston?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Evans? That's all I have, Mr. Panzella.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Moving to buildings and grounds. Mr. Martucci.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request approval to post unused school district items, equipment to the municipal site at no cost to the district. Online auction place for government agencies as presented to the board. In approval to scrap any unsold items with no questions or objections. I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request a conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks approval of the following additions to the custodian substitute list for the 2022-23 school year. With no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to hire a maintenance employee on a 6-month calendar day probationary period at a rate of $24.48 per hour in accordance with the Conroe School Custodial Maintenance Education Support Professionals Association, PSEA, NEA collective bargaining agreement, subject to assignment by the administration and satisfactory job performance, effective upon release of present employment. With no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to hire a 4-hour custodian effective March 23, 2023. With no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Motion to accept and authorize from the Collinsville Pony and Colt League a donation of labor and materials to be used for the replacement of the storage building, press box roof at the area known as the Junior High West Industrial Arts Building baseball field, formerly known as the Teener League baseball field, under lease with the Collinsville Pony and Colt League, and the completion of such replacement project subject to all district policies, rules, and regulations, and further noting that the amount of such donation neither exceeds any public bidding requirements nor necessitates the application of any prevailing wage requirements. With no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And request approval of the following event and building use requests. I'd like to spread 1 through 16 as presented, and with no questions or objections, I'd like to place on Wednesday's agenda.
Yeah, it might warrant further discussion to avoid conflict.
I'm sorry.
Some of these items we might need further discussion between the work session and the voting session to avoid further conflict for scheduling issues.
Okay.
We'll check it.
Thank you.
Hearing
Sorry
nothing
about
else,
that.
then that'll be placed on the agenda.
Okay, and that's all I have. Mr. Kirsch.
No.
Mr. Bagel. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Panzella.
Thank you, Mr. Martucci. Carnegie Free Library, Mr. Mongeau.
Thank you. We have nothing on the agenda for this month for Carnegie Free Library. Mr. Martre, do you have anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Sangston?
Nothing, thank you.
That's all we have, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Montiel. Moving to Collinsville Area Career and Technical Center, Mrs. Sangston.
Thank you, Mr. Pinzella. Request approval to add the following names to the 22-23 Occupational Advisory Committee list as attached. I didn't see it. No questions or objections, I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the following travel. Tina Dahl, Workforce Developmental Coordinator, to attend the IU1 Future Ready Partnership Conference on Tuesday, March 21st, 23, from 8 to 2:30 p.m. at the IU1 McMurray campus. Cost will be approximately $80 paid from the Workforce Development travel budget. No questions or objections, I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Tina Dahl, Workforce Development Coordinator, to attend the Economic Development through Diversity and Inclusion Conference sponsored by the WIB on Tuesday, May 9th, 23, at the Fred Rogers Center located at St. Vincent College. Cost will be approximately $53 paid from the Workforce Development travel budget. No questions or objections, I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Standards area there now. Okay, that's all we have, Mr. Pinzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sangston. Moving to curriculum, Mr. Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. 11A, Summer School. Request approval of the 2023 Summer School proposal as attached. No questions or objections. I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Amplify renewal. Request approval to renew the agreement with Amplify of M-Class Dibbles 8th ED student license for the 2023-24 school year at a cost of $12,814. No questions, or I'd like that added to the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
11C, esports curriculum. Request approval of the agreement with esports company for the course curriculum and a completion competition series for the 2023-24 school year at a cost of $3,500. No questions or objections. I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
What's that used for? What do we use that esports for?
And then we had a question.
We added careers in esports, so that will go along with that course.
Anything else? All right, that will be placed on the agenda.
11D, No Red Ink. Request approval to renew the agreement with No Red Ink for the 2023-2024 school year at a cost of $10,756. No questions or objections. I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Item 11E, committee meeting. Curriculum committee meeting was held March 14th at 2 p.m. That's all I have. Mr. Renzi.
I have nothing.
Mr. Mongel.
Nothing, sir. Thanks.
Dr. Coons.
I have nothing, thank you.
All we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Moving to cyber, Mr. Martret.
Thank you, Mr. Benzella. We have nothing this evening for on cyber. Mr. Cook and Mr. Montiel, do you have anything else to add?
No, sir.
Mr. Ghost, do you have anything?
I have nothing. Thank you.
That's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Martret. Moving to federal programs, Mr. Mongel.
Thank you. Item 13, requesting the approval to have summer learning camps at Bullskin Township, West Crawford, Springfield, Clifford Fritz High School, or Elementary School, Dunbar Township Elementary, Collinsville Area Middle School, and the Collinsville Area Senior High Schools to be paid from the ARP ESSER and the Title IV funds. Without any objections, I'd like this placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Item 13B, request the approval to hold the CASD Tech Camp with the date and times to be determined, available for teachers to attend a day of professional development hosted by the Collinsville administrative team and staff. This camp will focus on introductory and advanced level training sessions tailored to teachers' needs in the areas of new technology, initiatives, and core instructional practices, and it's paid for from Title II and Title IV funds. With no questions, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Item 13C, request the approval for Kinder Camp for incoming kindergarten students to be held at each elementary building in August at the approximate cost of $15,000, with the cost paid from Title I funds. With no questions, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And Mr. Martucci, do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Mr. Martray?
Nothing.
Dr. Turner?
I have nothing, thank you.
That's all we have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mongel. Moving to finance, Mr. Renzi.
Thank you, Mr. Pansella. Request approval of the following donations to the Connersville CAHS Bible Club from Mount Zion Community Church for $230, and to the CACTC, $200 donation from JB's Market for Skills USA T-shirt sponsorship. Skills USA members were seeking sponsorships from local business for a T-shirt fundraiser. All businesses that sponsor this fundraiser will have their names printed on the back of the T-shirts that will be sold to help fund future Skills USA conferences, activities, and competitions. I should have read all that. 2008 Ford Tars to the automotive mechanics program from Joseph F. Kramer Jr., $1,200 value, and 6 crippling blocks, whatever they are, to the heavy equipment program from James Frey Sr., $48 value. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
That will all be placed on the agenda.
And request approval of the attached requisitions, orders, and to authorize district business office to process orders and payments. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And we have an audit proposal. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Hartson, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Pansella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Moving to food service, Mrs. Sangston.
Thank you. Request a conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the substitute list for the 22-23 school year. No objections or questions like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to increase summer food workers' hourly wage. No questions or objections, I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, it'll be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Martray.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Trenholm.
Yes, I would like to add, I'd like to thank the maintenance and the custodial department for all their help during the power outage we had in March. We appreciate their help with the department, and at this time, without their help, we would have had $1,000 loss in food and milk. So thank you very much, we appreciate that. We also like to thank the Collinsville community with their help and generosity in the Feeding the School Kids Roundup associated with the Giant Foods and Martin Grocery Store. We received a $5,261.46 check to help the students here at Collinsville School District. And also the PRFSD Charitable Giving Committee awarded a $500 check to help support the buyback program at Jeff Tech. That's all I have.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sangston. Moving to personnel and review and liaison, Mr. Renzi.
Thank you, Mr. Pansella. Requested conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the professional substitute list for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request the conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the support professional substitute list for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the retirement effective June 1st, 2023, and to advertise and post for the position. No questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the retirement of teacher effective June 2nd, 2023. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the retirement of teacher effective June 2nd, 2023. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Excuse me. Request approval to accept the resignation from the long-term substitute instructor position for the CTC Automotive Collision Repair Program effective March 8th, 2023. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the
Question.
agenda. Question?
What are we going to do with that program? Is this, are we going to put another sub in there? Do we have anybody?
Yes, we do. That individual already started last Monday. I think, what was that, the correct date?
So we do have somebody that's qualified in there to finish off the year, and then once the determination is made, we will probably interview for that position.
Okay, thank you.
Request approval for, I'm sorry. You have to.
It's going to be put on the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry. Request approval for support personnel to take up to 10 intermittent unpaid days as requested for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
I think we skipped 16G, but we'll put that one on.
I'm sorry. Okay. That was 16H.
Yes.
Okay, 16G, request approval for support personnel to take an unpaid leave of absence beginning on or about April 6, 2023 for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for teacher to take 11 unpaid days as requested April 20th, 2023 to May 3rd, 2023. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
The following Family and Medical Leave Act leaves as confirmed by the board. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for teacher for release time with cost to be reimbursed by PSSA as follows. April 21st, 2023, half day. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
And request approval to volunteer in auto body shop at CACTC as needed for the 2022-2023 school year. No questions or objections. I'd like to have it placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Harrison, anything you want to add?
Nothing, thank you.
Dr. Bradley?
Nothing, thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Pantello. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Moving to policy and legislative, Mr. Martre.
Thank you, Mr. Panzel. Policy revisions, the first reading was February 15th, 2023. This is a request approval of the following policy revisions. 011, Principles of Governance and Leadership. 200, Enrollment of Students. 200, AR3, Student Classifications for Enrollment. 202, Eligibility of Non-Resident Students. 204, Attendance. 204, AR0, Compulsory Attendance, Unexcused Absences. 217, Graduation. 217, AR5, Pathways to Graduation. 221, Dress and Grooming. 233, Suspension and Expulsion. 251, Students Experiencing Homelessness, Foster Care, and Other Educational Instability. 251, AR0, Homeless Students. 251, AR2, Procedural Safeguards, Notice of Denial of Enrollment. 251, AR3, Enrollment Complaint Form. 810, Transportation. 610, Purchase, Subject to Bid and Quotation. 1611, Purchases Budgeted. 150.3, Federal Programs and Procurement. And those I'd like to have placed on the agenda for the, tomorrow evening, if there's no objections.
What about the next two?
Those two, okay, 434 and 534, revisions are still being made by our solicitor, so I'm going to table that to our April meeting, then we'll have a meeting in committee over it.
Mr. Solicitor, are you making revisions on those or not?
I am taking a look at those policies. My understanding is from just looking at them initially that there's one policy that covers all of the employees, given the language of that specific policy. But I am looking at those specific policies to confirm that that language is consistent with that general policy that covers everybody. So currently, you've got one policy that covers all employees, and then these policies are specifically addressing other employees. So to make it consistent, currently, everybody's covered under one policy. The goal would be to make these two policies and ensure that they're consistent with that other one. So that's what I would be looking at this point.
Okay, so we're going to wait till we get your recommendation. Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll have those on the agenda.
Mr. Mongel, do you have anything additional? Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Dr. Bradley?
Just for the 2 sick leaves, if, I just want to make sure operational to Mr. Witt, operationally, is it advisable to accept doctor slips that were written by a physician's assistant or a certified nurse practitioner for all employees or just the employees that are permitted by policy?
So you should be consistent across the board. You would want it to be consistent, which is why these policies do be updated.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all we have, Mr. Panzo. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to safety and security, Mr. Martucci.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Request approval of the memorandum of understanding between the city of Collinsville Police Department, the Collinsville School District, and the Pennsylvania State Police, Uniontown Barracks, and the Collinsville School District as proposed. No questions or objections. I'd like to have placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Question?
I didn't see the proposal, so what is it?
If I may?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mike. These are annual memorandums of understanding. They're different than union MOUs. So they're required by law. Mr. Parlak has a better understanding and can probably do a much better job than I can describing exactly what they are.
Thank you.
This is for the upcoming school year, not the current school year. We're still working under the ones that were already approved. They're biannual, and it is a law that we have them. And the reason that we do it this time is I was informed by the staff of the administration building that they need them sooner for the PIMS report, so they'll have them now, so that when they do that again this school year, they'll have it for the next 2 school years.
Thank you, I
So
appreciate it.
it's just an understanding that they will take care of any criminal investigations or crimes that are above the level that I'm legally allowed to do for the school district.
Thank you. I didn't see a date, so I wasn't really sure what. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
No other questions or objections that will be placed on the agenda?
And that's all I have, Mr. Panzella. Mr. Renzi?
nothing, thank you.
Mr. Parlak, anything further to add?
Nothing further along those lines. I just wanted to let you all know that the Stop the Bleed multi-wall mounted units are all in for all the buildings. Scott's people have been very gracious in getting them put up in a timely fashion. And the individual packs have also gone to each individual building for their staff that's on their emergency response teams, as well as the security people, the stadium as well. And then also that I have a CPI nonviolent crisis intervention training class I'll be teaching in April, the 1st of April, for remaining staff that needs their certification. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Parlak. That's all, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martucci. Sticking with you for special education.
We have no agenda items at this time. Mrs. Sangston?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. D'Amico? I'm sorry, he's not here. That's all, Mr. Penzo, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martucci. Moving to Student Services, Mrs. Sangston.
Thank you. Request for the agreement between Connellsville and Focus Staffing Group to offer speech and language services at a rate of $70 per hour for the remainder of 22-23 school year. No questions or objections? I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request for the Connellsville Area School District to host a second annual Transition Career Fair, Soaring into Your Future, and on May 4th from 11 to 1 in the high school auxiliary gym. No questions or objections? I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request for Andrea Anderson, Courtney Earl, Lynette Mars, Marcy Kintite, Ashley Fritz, Leslie Cisco, Sonia Bentley, and Stephanie Flynn to attend SAP training on March 28th, 29th, and 30th, with a total cost of $4,565 for registration, substitute teachers, and a cost of fuel paid through ARP EASER funds. No questions or objections? I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Request for Melissa Lloyd, Kristen Hunt, Trudy Harvey, Alexis Kunkel, Beth Angle, Tori Sparks, and Nick D'Amico to attend SAP update training at the Intermediate Union 1 on March 24th, 23 at no cost to the district. Any questions or objections? I would like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the 23-24 school calendar. No objections or questions. I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Travel 1 through 27. Questions or objections? I'd like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have. Mr. Harshman.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Mongiel.
Nothing, thanks.
Thank you. That's all we have.
Thank you, Mrs. Sangston. Moving to technology, Mr. Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Item 21A, Chromebook book purchase. Request approval to purchase 1,150 Chromebooks from GovConnection at a cost of $291,150 to be paid from the ARP ESSER funds. PEPPM contract number 532462-004. No questions or objections that they get placed on the agenda?
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Martucci.
No, sir.
Mr. Martrey.
No, sir.
Mr. Ghost.
Nothing else, thank you.
We have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Moving to transportation, Mr. Renzi.
Request approval of the following bus van driver additions, updates as attached. No questions or objections, I'll have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Anything else, Mr. Evans?
I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Panzella started with at the beginning of the meeting, to keep everyone involved in the accident today in our thoughts. Thank Dr. Bradley who helped out at the scene to try to sort through information with the troopers, and Mr. Parlack, who's the ultimate best person to have at a scene like that, who had a lot of experience. So, again, just thank those people and keep everyone in our thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. That's all I have, Mr. Panzella.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Also, thank you, Mr. Evans. I know you guys all had your hands full up there. You guys did a great job, so thank you guys once again.
Just Mr. Panzella, while we're on that, I'll read the statement that we co-authored. Mr. Evans and I co-authored the statement. At the time of my entering executive session, this is the statement that we had, the best amount of information that we had. We received troubling information approximately 3:35 p.m. An accident involving a T.A. Nelson van transporting 3 elementary-age students from Dunbar Township Elementary from school to home. The accident occurred in Dunbar Township on Dunbar-Ohio Powell Road. 1 student and the school van driver were transported by medical helicopter to Pittsburgh area hospitals. 2 students were transported by ambulance to local hospitals. We are thankful that the TA Nelson van driver applied his training and kept the students safe while waiting for first responders. We want to keep everyone in our thoughts and prayers. Speaking of those first responders, they're a very class act group from everyone involved, from Pennsylvania State Police to the different ambulances that arrive on scene, and we're able to get the individuals out of there very quickly. Go along with what Mr. Manzella said, Mr. Evans, Mr. Parlak, thank you. And also Mrs. Sanzone, she communicated with the families. She's already done that, offered our help and assistance. And Mrs. Sanzone has begun early stages with our members of our crisis planning team to answer any questions for elementary students in that building that they may have that may come about because of this accident, to have a plan for those teachers when they come in to be able to discuss that age appropriately with the different level of learners in that building. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to see that we have a great team and also a great system in place that can kick in right away and work the way it should. Moving to the President's report, the Agenda Manager Agreement, request approval to renew the agreement between Capital Area Intermediate Unit and the Collinsville Area School District for Agenda Manager Services beginning July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2026 at a cost of $3,900. That's a $500 increase. Hearing no questions or objections, we'll add that to the agenda. We have nothing under public comment for non-agenda items. Assistant to the Superintendent?
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bradley?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you, everybody.
Great.